Okay, I had to move some stuff around, and the Lord was speaking in the in term of waiting for that move. Um, so yeah, when it came down to it, your God ordained spouse was approached by this woman. She saw what he had acquired. The enemy sent this woman to him. This is your Bathsheba to David. He was in a rested state. He was in a place that he should have been sitting in the presence of the Lord, but his eyes started wandering because he started to begin to think he was going to start thinking with his smaller brain and not the big one. Let's just be honest. And when the smaller brain took over, his eyes became wide. Going back to what I was saying about Bathsheba, not Bathsheba, but Queen Sheba. This woman came with all these things. Your God ordained spouse had been focused on God's assignment for him, but he'd already come into alignment and the assignment was now easy for him. So that was no longer a struggle, but he was supposed to go into the state with God and seek out the next level of instructions. He did not. Queen Sheba came in. For some of you, your God ordained spouse was approached by somebody with status. This person had status. This person had access. This person had a level of great retune. She had cars. She had the access to the foods. She had access to the gold, which was money. She could give him anything that he wanted, any stone, anything. She could keep this man. And just like Bathsheba, she had the body that would make a grown man cry. And then she went and whispered in his ear exactly her desires. Which brings us back to Eve. I'm going to come back here because it's still something else. So, meanwhile, God was starting to tap on you because he had to create you. You weren't ready yet. You didn't even know what the Lord was doing. You was still over there trying to figure out some stuff. You hadn't even started walking with God fully. But God started pulling you away from the things that weren't of God that you were situated in order to begin the process of creating you. So he was still out there tilling the fields and birds and all of this stuff. He had given the names to the cattle, the birds, all that. He did the work. He was doing the work. This is the stuff that he was doing. But then he had to be put into a deep sleep. Your God ordained spouse acquiesced to my glasses are slipping off, that's why I did it. He acquiesced to the environment that he was in. For certain industries, there's a level of oppression that if you don't stay on your P's and Q's, especially if you're walking with God, you will slip up into it. And it will be as if you slowly were lulled to sleep. And the Lord allowed him to be lulled to sleep. He was allowed to go to sleep during this time frame. As I told you in, I think it was 2 previous words. One was the journey for the man, and then another was, what was the other word? It was something else I was talking about. But all of these things depicted the man being put to sleep. But God knew what he was doing by allowing him to go to sleep. He allowed him to go to sleep. He put him to sleep while he created you. For some of you, the time frame that you've been in, he's been creating you from this man's rib. That's why it's been taking a while. But he had to allow your husband to be asleep while he did this. That's why it looked like he was having a whole lot of fun. And you seemingly were over here suffering. And you're like, God, why he over there having all this fun and I'm over here? Because he was creating you from the rib. He took one of the man's ribs from a place that he would not miss it, and began to form you. I've been seeing words on butterflies and butterflies everywhere. Butterflies have to go into a cocoon for a season, and they have to fight their way out in order to come out as the pretty butterfly that you see. And you had to go into the cocoon, come out the cocoon, lay on the cocoon, wait for your wings to dry, and you have been in preparation for the flying point. Meanwhile, Bathsheba was already in place though. Because see, the enemy was already keen to the fact, oh, she coming. But I'm going to take a moment to acquiesce back here for Eve. Because this is two sides to the situation. Bathsheba wasn't always, for the all intents and purposes, this Bathsheba wasn't always who she was. Okay? Queen Sheba, we're going to say she wasn't always who she was. Okay? But this is the Eve part of her story. The Lord gave me a word of revelation on Eve a while ago. And in it, it talked about when Eve came to be. After she was presented, she went off and she was enjoying the promised land, or Eden, the garden. And this is when the snake came in. All Bathsheba is, Sheba, these were people that were Eve. These were people that, just as Eve, when she started, was innocent. They started off as innocent people. Okay? But as the Lord gave me revelation, let's say Eve in the industry that your God ordained spouse is in. She was there too. Okay? She was learning, she was understanding, she was gaining wisdom, all of this type of stuff while she was going along. And she had learned certain things and gained wisdom, strength, so on and so forth. But there was a offer presented to her. The snake. Going back, you can parallel this to the scene in Enchanted. You can parallel this to the scene in Snow White. An apple was presented to her. The problem was, for her, she bit it. For you, you didn't. Her making the choice to bite it was her making the decision that when she came into agreement with that tree of knowledge, with the sins of that environment, some of it New Age, some of it universal worship, some of it, come on, you know what we talking about. She came into alignment with that and began to eat the fruit thereof, of those trees. There are over 2,000 different forms of religious doctrines. Doctrines of devils, doctrines of demons. All these things only came about was because when they saw the word of God. They saw all of the regulations and restrictions in it and said, okay, I want to create my own. And with every creation of something else was created because the last thing somebody didn't like it, so they created something else, and somebody else created something else, and somebody else created something else. All of it based on the same stuff. It's just they decided to change the name and call it something else. Okay, that's all they did. And this is what happened. And when she bit the apple, God said it was like her going back to the boss of the company that she was working for, and she done looked through the boss's computer. And God said, I told you not to eat of that. You went into my secret files. You went into that place I told you not to. You went and bit that tree. You went over to Sodom and Gomorrah. You went over there. Then after she went over there, Eve came back and she took your husband with her. Which one you want me to verse? I'm hearing the song Rocket Love. And I wasn't going to do this first, but I guess the Lord wants me to do that one first. Hold on. When your God ordained spouse came in contact with his Sheba, this is what happened. I longed for you since I was born. Some of your God ordained spouses saw this person in this place prior to having access to them. A woman, sensitive and warm, that you were. They were actually seeking someone like you, but Sheba had the underlying heart for being this woman, and they wanted to make her into that because everybody talked about her being this. And because of that, he lusted after it. And here you go. With pride and strength, no one would test. It was a test. But yet, having feminine finesse, this is what she did, and so much more, you took me riding on a rocket. Do I really need to say what happened? Do I? You want me to say put it in plain English? She took him on a ride. Read between the lines. She took him on a ride. You gave me the star. He felt like he was on cloud 9 being with this person because he now had access to this person, this access, this level. He was a kept man and he wasn't going nowhere. But at a half a mile from heaven, you dropped me down to this cold, cold world. She gave him a ride, all right. She rode him right well. You know how men are. As soon as they get a ride like that, they can't think with their actual brain no more. I told you in the word about the man's journey that he acquiesced to a point that he was on his knees before a woman. And he gave her access to the cars, the codes, and the security of what he had access to. But she had so much more. He didn't have to give it to her, but because she already had a level. She was on the come up at the time anyway. So they passed each other in the midst of her come up. And took me on a ride on your rocket and gave me a star. She gave him access, brownie points, and privileges that he wouldn't have had he not hooked up with her. But a half a mile from heaven, you dropped me back. This woman, just like Sheba, would lure him in. Going back to Sheba, Sheba saw his potential. And she said to the king, the report was true, which I heard in my own land of your affairs and of your wisdom. But I did not believe the reports until I came to see it with my own eyes. Holding behalf of what was told of me, your wisdom, your property surpassed the report I'd heard. Happy with your wives and these servants, and continuing to stand before you in hearing your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord who delighted in and set you on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever, and he has made you king, that you may execute justice righteously. This Bathsheba, the Sheba woman, she laid in bed with him and went straight Delilah on his behind to Solomon. She sought him for his secrets from his bedroom. She laid with him. And he gave it all up. Not at first, because even Solomon did not give it up at first. But she gave it up. Or shall I say, he gave it up to her. And with that, he rode up to heaven in that moment. But just like that, she gave her body to him, and it opened his mouth to speaking stuff he never should have said to her. And the dropping back down. This woman was using what she could gain access to him, and every time he got close to something, she would lead him astray of God.